After 8 years together, my fiancé made a joke that cost him his friends, his reputation, and his future with me. He told his buddies that marriage was a trap he was avoiding. So I gathered the evidence, published the truth, and set myself free. This is a story about words having consequences. If you believe in standing up for your own worth, make sure you subscribe, because you won't want to miss how this ends. The official scent of our life, I'd decided, was a permanent blend of Johnson's baby powder and the faint, greasy aroma of whatever skillet-charred dinner Lamar was trying to master that week. It was the smell of hard-won stability. Of us. From my spot on the living room floor, where I was locked in a battle of wills with our 2-year-old son, Leo, over whether stacking blocks were for building or for chewing. I could hear Lamar humming badly off-key to some classic rock station. Leo let out a sudden, delighted giggle, a full-bodied, slobbery sound that felt like the absolute center of my universe, and for that single, suspended moment, everything felt perfect. But it was a fragile kind of perfection. The kind you're afraid to breathe on too heavily for fear it might shatter. This life was built from rubble. 8 years with Lamar had been a masterclass in controlled chaos. We'd met with all the brilliant, foolish certainty of being 22. He'd proposed 4 years ago with a ring from a pawn shop and a promise of forever. And I'd believed him. Then the world had shut down. The pandemic had vaporized our wedding plans and our savings. What followed was a brutal cascade of life's worst hits, a layoff, an eviction, and 3 terrifying weeks where home was the backseat of our beat-up Honda Civic. I remember the chilling cold of the vinyl seats at 3 a.m., the shame of brushing my teeth in a gas station bathroom. I remember Lamar holding me, whispering, "We'll get through this, Danny. I promise." And we did. In the midst of that uncertainty, against all logic, we created Leo. He was our anchor. We clawed our way back from the edge, one grueling shift at a time. Now we had this apartment, small but clean, with walls we could actually hang pictures on. I worked nights as a nurse's aide. He worked days at a garage. We had a beautiful, healthy son. We were, by all measures, stable, but a promise still hung in the air, unfinished. The dream of a big wedding had died in that Honda, but a smaller, more stubborn one had taken its place. I didn't need a ballroom or a 5-course meal. I just wanted a simple party in a public park. A potluck where our friends' laughter was the main dish. I wanted to wear a pretty white dress, even if it was from a discount website, and to have one single day where we could stand before everyone we loved and make it real. I wanted, finally, to be his wife. It's a cruel trick of the mind how a few careless words can reach back in time and poison a happy memory. I used to cherish the night I first brought up the potluck wedding idea. About 5 months ago, we were sitting on this same floor, Leo breathing softly in his crib. The apartment quiet around us. My heart was thumping with a nervous rhythm against my ribs. After so much hardship, asking for something, even something small, felt like a monumental risk. "Honey," I started, my voice quieter than I intended. I busied my hands, tracing the faded floral pattern on the rug. I was thinking about the wedding. He looked up from his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. That familiar, guarded look settled on his face, the one he got when he was anticipating a difficult conversation. "Yeah, what about it?" "I think we could do it now," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "We could make it really simple. The community lawn behind the building, maybe some fairy lights from Amazon. We can ask everyone to bring a dish instead of a gift. I even found a dress online. Danny, it's only $200. It's perfect. After everything, I want to be your wife. Officially. I laid my entire, fragile hope at his feet. The silence that followed stretched for an eternity, filled only by the low hum of the refrigerator. The blue light from his phone cast long shadows across his face, making him unreadable. Just when I was about to retract it all, to say never mind. It's a stupid idea. He reached over and took my hand. His calloused fingers were warm against mine. That's not a bad idea, Danny, he said. And his voice was so gentle, it made my eyes prickle with tears. It's really not. Let's aim for July. Next year. Okay, we can definitely make it happen. The relief was so immense it felt like I could finally breathe again. Really? Yeah. Really? He smiled then. A full, genuine smile that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. I leaned in and kissed him, tasting the salt of my own happy tears. But July was a vague, distant promise, and we never spoke of it again. It became a locked door in our conversations. Whenever I tried the handle, gently suggesting we could at least start a guest list or pick a color scheme, he would find a way to bolt it shut. We've got plenty of time. Babe, he'd say, or let's just get through this next car payment first. And I, desperate to be the cool, low-maintenance fiancé who had survived homelessness and never complained, would always let it go. Our world had shrunk to a comfortable, predictable loopwork. Leo, and our next-door neighbors, Sarah and Mike, they'd moved in around the same time we did. And our friendship had been instant and deep. Sarah was my lifeline. She understood the exhaustion, the tiny victories, the relentless rhythm of motherhood. Our kids were best friends. Our apartments were separated by a sagging chain-link fence. So low it felt more like a polite suggestion than an actual boundary. We lived in each other's pockets, overhearing everything from their arguments about recycling to my solo karaoke sessions in the shower. It was a chaotic but comforting intimacy. So when they invited us for a casual barbecue last Saturday, it felt like a welcome exhale at the end of a long week. The afternoon sun was warm, and the air was thick with the holy trinity of suburban smells: cut grass, charcoal, and chlorine from a distant pool. Mike and Lamar were immediately drawn to Mike's ancient pickup truck, a rust-pocked beast that was his life's great project. They were joined by a couple of Mike's other buddies, and soon the familiar ritual began. Hoods were propped open, tools were brandished, and beer cans were cracked. Sarah and I retreated to the relative peace of her kitchen. We sat at her table, sipping iced tea and watching our toddlers chase each other in dizzying circles through the screen door. If I have to hear the phrase torque converter one more time, I'm going to scream, Sarah said, rolling her eyes with the practiced exasperation of a mechanic's wife. He's been working on that thing since the dawn of time. I laughed. A genuine, easy sound. I know. Lamar spent a solid hour last week just polishing a set of wrenches. An hour. The baby could have solved world hunger in that time. We talked for what felt like hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly from potty training woes to office gossip. At some point, Leo demanded French fries, and I realized we were out of ketchup. No problem, I said, getting up. I'll just pop over and grab ours. I stepped out the back door and into the golden light of the late afternoon. The men were still clustered around the truck, their voices a low, rumbling, Murmur. As I crossed the patchy lawn towards my own back door, their conversation floated over the fence, as clear as if they were standing next to me. One of the guys, Tyler, was in the middle of a rant, and now she wants to put in a new backsplash. A backsplash, I'm telling you. Man. His voice was sour, dripping with resentment. Once you get that ring on her finger, it all stops. The fun. The freedom. All of it. It's over. A familiar. Cold knot tightened in the base of my stomach. It was the kind of talk I'd heard a million times. The tired old trope of the ball and chain wife. I should have kept walking. I should have ignored it. But my feet slowed, and I found myself stopping in the shadow of the big oak tree that straddled our property line, hidden from their view. And then I heard it. The voice I knew better than my own. Lamar's voice. Followed by a lazy, self-satisfied chuckle. The kind of chuckle he used when he wanted to impress other men. That's why I'm dragging my feet. Man, he said. The words hit me with physical force, knocking the air from my lungs. The men around him erupted in a chorus of validating, backslapping laughter. Don't do it. Lamar, another voice shouted gleefully. It's a trap. More laughter. Sharp. Ugly. And aimed directly at me. The world went silent and blurry at the edges. The bright, sunny day seemed to dim. The cheerful sounds of the neighborhood, a distant lawnmower, kids shouting, faded into a dull, meaningless hum. All I could hear was that phrase, looping endlessly in my mind. Each syllable a fresh stab, dragging my feet. It's a trap. My simple, heartfelt dream of a potluck wedding, the symbol of our survival and our future, was just a trap he was proud of avoiding. My face was on fire. I could feel the blood rushing to my cheeks. A hot tide of shame and fury. My hand trembled, and I tightened my grip on the plastic ketchup bottle to keep from dropping it. For one wild second, I wanted to step out from behind the tree, to confront them all, to see the look on his face when he realized I'd heard him. But I was frozen. They just cracked open more beers, the conversation shifting seamlessly to engine displacement, leaving me standing there with the wreckage of their casual cruelty. I backed away, one slow, deliberate step at a time, my feet sinking into the soft grass. I slipped back into my own apartment, the screen door whispering shut behind me. The ketchup bottle landed on the counter with a dull thud. I couldn't go back. I couldn't face Sarah's cheerful questions or Lamar's oblivious smile. Hours later, when he finally came home, he smelled of cheap beer and bonfire smoke. He was happy, relaxed, his face flushed from the sun. He came up behind me as I stood numbly at the sink, rinsing dishes that were already clean. He wrapped his arms around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. Hey, you, he murmured into my hair. You disappeared on us. Everything okay? My entire body went rigid. His touch, usually a comfort, felt like a brand. I kept my eyes fixed on the stream of water hitting a ceramic plate. Leo was getting fussy, I said, my voice thin and strange. Decided to call it a night early. He accepted the lie without question. He kissed my neck, a casual, proprietary gesture, and headed for the shower, humming that same stupid song. I stood there, gripping the edge of the porcelain sink until my knuckles were white, and let the hot water run over my hands, trying to scald the feeling of his touch away. The next 2 weeks were a special kind of hell. I existed in a fog of quiet, Simmering rage. I went through the motions: work, daycare, dinner, bedtime stories, but I felt hollowed out. He, of course, noticed nothing. He saw my silence as tiredness, my distance as stress. His ignorance was, somehow, the most painful part. It confirmed that I was not at the forefront of his mind. I was just part of the scenery. I told myself I had to be sure. I had to give him one last chance to prove my ears had deceived me. So tonight, as we were sitting on the couch in a rare moment of quiet after Leo was asleep, I took the plunge. The sitcom on the television filled the room with hollow, pre-recorded laughter. I was looking at some color palettes online today, I said, my voice so soft it was almost lost in the noise from the television. For the wedding, he didn't even turn to look at me. I saw his shoulders tighten. A barely perceptible shift. But I saw it. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with everything unsaid. Danny. He finally sighed. His tone heavy with an exhaustion I now understood wasn't from work. It was exhaustion with me. With this topic, can we not, I think we really need to sit down and weigh the pros and cons before we jump into something like that. It's a big decision. Pros and cons. He said it so clinically, so reasonably, as if our 8 years, or son, the home we had built from the ashes of our past life, could all be reduced to a checklist on a legal pad. The joke he made with his friends wasn't a joke at all. It was a policy. The thread I had been hanging onto finally snapped. The humming of anxiety in my mind stopped. It was replaced by a profound, chilling silence. A silence where everything was suddenly terribly clear. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just sat there on the couch. The cheap, synthetic fabric suddenly feeling abrasive against my skin. The canned laughter from the television sitcom felt like an assault. A mocking soundtrack to the complete and utter implosion of my life. Pros and cons. The words echoed in the silent space he had created between us. He hadn't even looked at me when he said it. He had passed judgment on our 8 years together with all the emotional investment of a man deciding which brand of motor oil to buy. Slowly, deliberately, I looked down at my left hand. The ring he'd given me was simple. A small diamond on a thin silver band. He'd saved for 6 months to buy it from that pawn shop downtown. And when he'd slipped it on my finger, his hands had been shaking. It had been the most valuable thing I owned. Not because of its price, but because of the promise it held. A promise that was now, officially, Ali. With a calmness that felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. I slid the ring off my finger. The skin underneath was pale and indented. A ghost of the commitment I had so faithfully worn. I leaned forward, my movements measured and fluid, and placed the ring on the dark wood of the coffee table. It made a tiny, almost imperceptible click against the surface. The sound was deafening. I think, I said, my voice even and devoid of any emotion I was actually feeling. We should stop talking about the wedding. That got his attention. His head snapped toward me, his eyes wide with a confusion that quickly curdled into irritation. The sitcom was forgotten. What are you doing? He asked. His voice sharp. He gestured at the ring. A tiny silver circle glinting under the lamplight. Danny. What the hell is this? Are you being serious? Perfectly serious, I replied, meeting his gaze. You're being dramatic. You're taking one little comment and blowing it completely out of proportion. He started to get up, moving to the edge of the couch, leaning towards me as if his proximity could force me to back down. This is insane. No, I said, and the word was as solid and unmoving as a stone. I'm not being dramatic. I'm just finally listening to what you've been telling me all along. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of pure frustration. Now the anger was coming. I could see it building behind his eyes. Because you were eavesdropping on a private conversation. That's what this is about. Some stupid joke I made with the guys after a few beers. Was it a joke? Lamar Permet asked. My voice still quiet. Because it didn't sound like one tonight. Tonight it sounded like a business proposal you're having second thoughts about. He scoffed. A short, ugly sound of disbelief. Oh. Come on. You can't seriously be this sensitive. It was guy talk, you know how it is? You're not supposed to take that stuff seriously. My God. I can't believe we're even having this conversation. He was trying to flip it. To make me the villain. The irrational, overly sensitive woman who couldn't take a joke. The snooping fiancé who had violated his trust. For 8 years. That tactic would have worked. I would have crumpled. Apologized. And taken the blame. Just to restore the peace. But something inside me had broken that night. And the pieces had rearranged themselves into something harder. Something that wouldn't yield. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply stood up. I'm tired. Lamar. I'm going to bed. I left him there. Sputtering. The ring sitting between us like an unexploded bomb. I didn't sleep. Of course. I lay in our bed, facing the wall, listening to him pace the living room for an hour before he finally came in and laid down on the far edge of the mattress, his back a rigid wall of indignation. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, my eyes gritty and swollen from a night of silent, tearless grief. The space next to me was empty. I moved through the quiet apartment like a ghost, getting Leo dressed and fed in a practiced, automatic rhythm. When Lamar finally emerged from the spare room, his face was a mask of sullen resentment. He poured himself a coffee and leaned against the counter, watching me. Are you going to keep this up all day? He asked. I strapped Leo into his high chair and handed him a piece of toast. Keep what up? This silent treatment. Acting like I'm some kind of monster. I said I was sorry if it hurt your feelings. What more do you want? He hadn't said he was sorry. Not once. And that was the entire point. I picked up my purse and Leo's diaper bag. I have to get him to daycare. I'm running late. I walked out without another word. But instead of turning towards the daycare, I walked straight to Sarah's apartment and knocked on the door. When she opened it, still in her pajamas with her hair in a messy bun, her cheerful good morning died on her lips. Danny, what's wrong? You look awful. That was all it took. The dam I had so carefully constructed all night finally broke. The story came pouring out of me in a torrent of whispered, frantic words, the pros and cons. The ring on the table. The gaslighting. I stood in her entryway. Tears I didn't know I had left streaming down my face. While Leo looked on from my arms with wide-eyed, confused eyes. Sarah guided me inside, sat me down at her kitchen table, and took Leo from me. Settling him on the floor with a pile of toys, she made me a cup of tea. Her movements efficient and angry on my behalf. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with every word I said. When I finally finished, hiccuping through the last of my tears, she was silent for a long moment. He's a coward, she said finally, her voice low and furious. I'm so sorry. Danny. I'm so sorry. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, And I need to tell you something. This isn't the first time. I looked up, my breath catching in my throat. What do you mean? I mean, she said, her eyes holding mine. I've heard him say similar things before. A few times. When he thinks it's just him and the guys out back. I never said anything because I didn't want to cause trouble. I thought maybe I was mishearing. Or maybe it was just stupid jokes. But her words were a brutal, painful gift. They were the ultimate validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive. I wasn't blowing things out of proportion. I was responding to a pattern of disrespect that had been happening right under my nose. He'll just deny it, I whispered, the reality of the situation crashing down on me. He'll tell everyone I'm hysterical. He'll make me out to be the bad guy. Sarah's jaw tightened. A spark ignited in her eyes. Not if he can't deny it, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Not if you have proof. Danny, you need something he can't lie his way out of. You need to record him. The suggestion hung in the air. Shocking and illicit. Record him, Sarah. I can't. That's something people do on television. It feels so wrong. What's wrong? She countered, her voice sharp with protective fury. Is him making you feel worthless for 8 years? What's wrong is him turning your dream into a punchline for his drinking buddies. He's counting on you being too nice to fight back. For once, prove him wrong. I left her apartment an hour later, my mind reeling. The idea of recording Lamar felt like a monumental betrayal, a line I never imagined crossing. But as the days passed, he seemed determined to push me across it. He initiated a campaign of pathetic, half-hearted making nice. He brought home my favorite Chinese takeout one night, acting as if that settled everything. The next day, he brought me a bouquet of sad, grocery store carnations, which I accepted with a numb, silent nod. But his act was only for me. That Friday, I was putting Leo to bed when I heard Lamar's voice drifting from the living room. He was on the phone with one of his friends. Probably Mike. I stood just outside Leo's bedroom door, my heart pounding. I don't know. Man, she's just being super moody, he was saying, his voice a long-suffering sigh. Yeah. I got her flowers and everything. It's ridiculous. Honestly, I think it's just that time of the month. You know how it is. He laughed. A small, dismissive laugh. My blood ran ice cold. He had reduced my legitimate, soul-crushing pain to a hormonal inconvenience. A cliché. That was all I was to him. An irrational woman whose feelings could be managed with cheap flowers and then mocked behind her back. My hesitation evaporated. My guilt vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve that settled deep in my bones. I walked into the kitchen, took the carnations out of their vase, and shoved them deep into the trash can, right under a pile of coffee grounds. The next morning, I was at Sarah's door. Okay, I said, before she could even say hello. I'm in. Tell me your plan. We spent the next hour huddled at her kitchen table like battlefield generals. It was Sarah who devised the details. The guys always end up sitting at that picnic table by the grill, she explained, pointing out her kitchen window. It's right there. If I leave the window open just a crack, and I put my phone on the windowsill behind the spice rack, the microphone will pick up everything. When I asked, my voice tight, next Saturday, I'll tell Mike I want to have one last barbecue before the weather turns, It's perfect. He'll invite his friends. Lamar included. You just have to make sure you're here. 2. The week leading up to the barbecue was the longest of my life. I lived a double life. In front of Lamar, I was cautiously thawing, allowing his pathetic peace offerings to seemingly work. Inside, I was a coiled spring of anxiety and determination. The night before the party, I stood in the doorway of Leo's room, watching the gentle rise and fall of his small chest in the dim glow of his nightlight. A wave of profound grief washed over me, grief for the family I had fought so hard to build, for the man I desperately wished Lamar could be. I wasn't just ending a relationship, I was detonating a life. But then I looked at my son, so innocent and perfect, and I knew I was doing this for him. 2. I couldn't raise him in a home where his mother was treated as a joke, an obstacle, a trap. He deserved better. I deserved better. The day of the barbecue arrived, bright and deceptively cheerful. My stomach was in knots. Every smile I offered, every bit of small talk I made, felt like a performance. I watched as Sarah, cool as a cucumber, casually placed her phone on the windowsill, pressing record before arranging a bottle of olive oil in front of it. The trap was set. I took Leo to the far side of the yard, pushing him on the swing set. My back to the men who were gathering around the grill, I could hear their laughter. The familiar sound of beer cans being opened. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic drumbeat against the lazy buzz of the afternoon. This had to work. Then, through the noise, I heard Mike's voice, loud and clear. So, Lamar, Danielle mentioned you guys were looking at next July for the wedding. You finally ready to take the plunge? Buddy. Silence. It was the perfect bait. I held my breath, my hands gripping the chains of the swing so tightly my knuckles were white. I heard Lamar give a low, rumbling laugh. Take the plunge, he repeated, his voice slick with the false confidence of a few beers. Let me tell you guys the real deal about taking the plunge. I locked eyes with Sarah across the yard. She gave me a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was a look of grim, heartbreaking victory. The trap had just been sprung. I didn't stay to listen to the rest. I couldn't. Hearing that first sentence, that lazy, dismissive laugh, was enough. My heart, which had been hammering against my ribs, suddenly felt like a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I saw Sarah's grim nod from across the yard, and it was all the confirmation I needed. I turned away, scooped a protesting Leo from the swing, and headed back toward our apartment, my movements stiff and robotic. Everything okay, Mike called out from the grill, spatula in hand. I forced a smile that felt like cracking plaster. Leo's getting cranky. I called back over my shoulder. Time for a nap before he has a total meltdown. It was the perfect, unimpeachable excuse. No one ever questioned a mother's retreat in the face of an impending toddler tantrum. I didn't look at Lamar. I didn't dare. I just kept walking. My son's warm, solid weight in my arms, the only thing keeping me grounded. Back inside our apartment, the silence was a physical presence. I put Leo down for his nap, my hands moving with practiced efficiency as I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and pulled the blinds. Then I walked back into the living room and sank onto the couch, my body trembling with a toxic cocktail of adrenaline and grief. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. I have it. It's worse than you thought. She brought the phone over that evening, after Lamar had gone out for a quick beer with the guys. A transparent attempt to escape the quiet tension that had filled our apartment since he'd returned from the barbecue. We sat at my kitchen table, in the same table where I had planned my imaginary wedding, and she pressed play. First, there was the hiss of the recording, the ambient noise of a suburban afternoon. Then, his voice, tinny and distorted, but unmistakably his. Let me tell you guys the real deal about taking the plunge, he was saying, his words slightly slurred. It's a game. And you lose the second you say, I do. First, it's the money. All your cash, it's not yours anymore. It's our cash. Which means it's for her little projects. Like new curtains or whatever the hell she wants this week. Your freedom gone. You can't just go for a beer after work. It becomes a whole negotiation. You have to check in. Get permission. You basically trade in your friends for her friends' boring-ass husbands. Someone laughed. What about the sex? Man. Lamar let out a bitter chuckle that made my stomach clench. Oh. That dies a slow, painful death. You're lucky if you get it on your birthday. It becomes a chore. A weapon. She's too tired or has a headache. But what she really means is you didn't load the dishwasher, right? It's a trap. I'm telling you. And I'm not some dumb animal walking into it. The recording continued. But I held up a hand. I couldn't hear any more. A bitter, acidic taste rose in my throat. This wasn't just a thoughtless joke about avoiding a wedding. This was a deep-seated, poisonous contempt for me. For our life. For the very idea of being my husband. Every sacrifice I had made. Every hardship we had endured together. He saw as nothing more than the tightening jaws of a trap. Sarah clicked the phone off. Her face pale with fury on my behalf. The venom of his words hung in the air between us. Thick and suffocating. My grief from the night I'd heard the first comment was gone. Burned away by a clean, white-hot rage. He hadn't just betrayed a promise. He had revealed that, in his heart, there was never a promise to begin with. The next few days were a blur of clandestine preparation. My rage became my fuel, sharpening my focus into a razor's edge. While Lamar was at work, I began to build my arc. First, the money. I sat down at my laptop, my hands steady on the keyboard, and logged into our joint savings account. It wasn't much, but we had scraped together a few $1,000s as an emergency fund. Our emergency fund. I stared at the balance, my throat tightening. This was an emergency. I opened a new, separate account in my name only and transferred exactly half of the money into it. The click of the mouse confirming the transaction was a small sound, but it felt like a seismic shift. It was the first concrete step toward a life without him. Next, I called my parents. They lived 3 states away, and I tried not to burden them with my problems. But this was different. I stood in my kitchen, twisting the landline's cord around my fingers, and when my mom answered, her warm, familiar voice almost broke me. I kept my own voice steady. Clinical. I told her there were serious problems with Lamar and me, and that I might need to leave. I didn't give her the ugly details. Not yet. I just needed to know I had a place to land. Say the word. Honey, she said immediately. No questions asked. Your father and I will get in the car. Your old room is waiting for you. I hung up. A wave of gratitude so intense, it buckled my knees. I had a safety net. Now, I could be brave. The final piece was the weapon itself. That night, after Lamar was asleep, snoring softly beside me in a bed that had become a frozen tundra. I took my laptop into the living room. In the cool, blue glow of the screen, I opened my Facebook page. For a long time, I just stared at the blinking cursor in the What's on Your Mind box. Then, I began to write. I wrote and deleted and rewrote for over an hour. I refused to be hysterical. I would not be emotional. My words had to be calm, factual, and devastating. I started by acknowledging our 8 years together, the love I thought we had, the son we both adored. I wrote about our engagement, and how so many of our friends and family had been patiently waiting for a wedding announcement. For all of you who have been asking, I typed, the clicking of the keys unnaturally loud in the silent apartment. I finally have an answer. It's an answer I wasn't meant to hear, but one I feel everyone deserves to know. I've been wondering for a while why Lamar has been hesitant to set a date. And this past weekend, he finally explained his reasoning to his friends. I think it's best you hear it directly from him. Then, I clicked the small, unassuming paperclip icon to add an attachment. I found the audio file Sarah had sent me, Lamar recording, MP3, and selected it. It uploaded in seconds. I stared at the little blue bar, my heart pounding a frantic, terrifying rhythm. This was it. This was the point of no return. My cursor hovered over the post button. My hand trembled. For a second, my eyes drifted to a framed photo on the end table, a picture of Lamar and me from 5 years ago. Goofy and young, laughing on a beach. A powerful wave of grief hit me. A ghost of the love I was about to incinerate. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to burn everything to the ground? Then I thought of his voice on that recording. It's a trap. I thought of him telling his friend my pain was just a hormonal mood swing. I thought of my son sleeping peacefully in the next room. My resolve hardened like steel. I took a deep breath, and I clicked. The post went live. Without hesitating, I tagged Lamar. I tagged his mother, his brother, and a dozen of our closest mutual friends, including Mike and the others who had been there. Then, in a series of swift, surgical clicks, I blocked Lamar's number from my phone, blocked his profile on Facebook, and then, for good measure, I turned my phone completely off. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I sat on the couch in the dark, my body buzzing, just waiting. I felt like a soldier in a trench, having just launched a missile, waiting for the inevitable, cataclysmic impact. It didn't take long. 10 minutes later, the landline on the kitchen wall shrieked to life. A harring, alien sound in our cell phone world. I knew who it was. I let it ring 10 times before I picked it up. Hello? Danielle. What is the meaning of this? It was his mother. Her voice a high-pitched screech of outrage. You have to take that down right now. You're posting lies and trying to destroy my son. I held the phone slightly away from my ear. My voice surprisingly steady. I didn't post any lies. Carol. I only posted what he said. It was a private conversation. You're trying to humiliate him. How could you do this to your family? You should be asking your son why he said it. I replied. My voice as cold and sharp as ice. You should be asking him why he thinks his family is a trap. I hung up the phone before she could respond. The front door slammed open 20 minutes later. Lamar burst in, his face pale and blotchy, his eyes wild. He had his phone clutched in his hand like a weapon. Take it down, he roared, his voice shaking with a mixture of fury and panic. Now, take it the hell down. Danielle. I didn't move from the couch. I just looked at him, feeling strangely detached. Like I was watching a scene from a movie. No. I said simply, "You're trying to ruin my life," he screamed, taking a step towards me. "My mother is calling me. My boss saw it. All my friends. What is wrong with you?" He was falling apart. And for the first time in 8 years, I felt absolutely no instinct to comfort him. The man I loved was gone. This frantic, cornered stranger was all that was left. He saw the look on my face. Saw that his anger wasn't working. He switched tactics. His face crumpled. The rage replaced by a desperate, pathetic plea. He rushed forward and dropped to his knees in front of me, grabbing my hands. His were slick with sweat. "Danny. Baby. I'm sorry," he sobbed, actual tears streaming down his face. "Okay, I'm so sorry. It was stupid. It was the dumbest thing I've ever said. I didn't mean any of it. Please. Please just take it down. We can fix this. I swear. We'll get married. We'll get married tomorrow. I don't care, whatever you want." I looked down at the man kneeling at my feet. The man who was finally offering me everything I had ever wanted. But only because his reputation was on the line. And I felt nothing. No pity. No love. Just a vast, empty coldness. I pulled my hands out of his. "You're not sorry you said it," I said. And my voice was quiet. But it cut through his sobs like a knife. "You're just sorry you got caught." I stood up and walked past him, toward the hallway that led to our son's room. He stared up at me, his mouth hanging open, the tears freezing on his cheeks. He finally understood. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a verdict. "It's too late." "Lamar," I said, my back to him. "I called a lawyer this morning." I walked into Leo's room, quietly closing the door behind me, leaving Lamar alone in the wreckage of the life he had so casually destroyed. The soft click of the lock sliding into place was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. Behind the flimsy wood of Leo's bedroom door, the world went quiet. I leaned my forehead against it. The cool, smooth paint, a stark contrast to my burning cheeks. On the other side, I could hear Lamar's ragged, desperate sobs slowly devolve into a string of furious, muffled curses. Then, the sound of something smashing against a wall, a glass, maybe a photo frame. I flinched but didn't move. In his crib, Leo stirred, making a soft snuffling sound in his sleep, and my spine straightened. I was a mother bear in her den, and the monster was outside. I would not let him in. After a few more minutes of impotent rage, I heard the front door slam shut with enough force to rattle the pictures on the hallway walls. And then, silence. A profound, echoing silence filled with the ghosts of 8 years. I didn't leave the room for another hour. I just sat on the small rocking chair in the corner, watching my son's chest rise and fall, the soft glow of the dinosaur nightlight casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The adrenaline began to recede, leaving a hollow, trembling exhaustion in its wake. The storm had passed, but I was in the eye of the hurricane, and I knew the real devastation was only just beginning to unfold. Eventually, with my limbs feeling heavy as lead, I went to my own room and packed. I moved with a single-minded purpose, stuffing clothes for me and Leo into a large duffel bag. I packed his favorite stuffed giraffe, his toothbrush, the worn copy of Goodnight Moon. I packed my own essentials, my work uniform, My toiletries. I didn't take a single photo. Not one memento of our life together. That life was a crime scene now. And I was escaping it. When the sun began to stream through the blinds the next morning, I was already dressed and waiting. I had dozed for maybe an hour in the rocking chair, too afraid to lie in the bed we had shared. I strapped a sleepy, confused Leo into his car seat, took one last look at the apartment that was no longer my home, and walked out without looking back. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. By the time I was halfway to my parents' house, my phone, which I had finally dared to turn back on, was a relentless engine of notifications. It buzzed and chimed nonstop, a digital chorus of the chaos I had unleashed. The Facebook post had taken on a life of its own. It had hundreds of comments, dozens of shares. It was a digital wildfire, and Lamar was burning at the center of it. I pulled over at a rest stop to read, my hands shaking as I scrolled. There were the predictable comments from his family, calling me a vindictive, unstable liar. But they were vastly outnumbered. Friends of mine, acquaintances, even people I barely knew, were flooding the post with messages of support. Good for you for standing up for yourself. You and Leo deserve so much better. His true colors are finally showing. But the most damning comments came from the men who had been there. Mike, Sarah's husband, had posted a long, public apology directly to me. Danny, I am so sorry. He wrote. I was there. And I heard it. I laughed along because it's what guys do. And that's no excuse. It was wrong. And you didn't deserve it. Lamar was completely out of line. His comment opened the floodgates. Two of the other men who had been there added their own replies, confirming the story. They had turned on him. His own friends had become witnesses for the prosecution. The days that followed were a strange, surreal blur. I existed in the quiet, safe cocoon of my childhood home. My parents were incredible. They didn't pry or push for details. They simply absorbed me and Leo back into the rhythm of their lives, feeding us, letting us sleep, and creating a perimeter of peace around our grief. While I was healing, Sarah became my eyes and ears back home. She gave me daily updates. Her texts a running commentary on Lamar's spectacular self-destruction. His friends, she reported, had completely abandoned him. The barbecue crew had ostracized him. Embarrassed to have been party to his humiliation, he had apparently tried to salvage things, telling them I had recorded him illegally, that I was crazy. But the damage was done. They had seen the public backlash, seen their own names and reputations being linked to his toxic rant, and they wanted nothing to do with him. Worse, the post had reached his professional life. His boss, a man who was a distant cousin of my father, had apparently seen the post. According to Sarah, the rumor mill at the garage was in overdrive. Lamar was being called into the office for closed-door meetings. He was being shunned by his coworkers. His reputation as the reliable, good-natured family man was utterly destroyed. He was now just the guy who had been publicly brutally exposed by the fiancé he had disrespected. He was a cautionary tale. A week after I left, he showed up. My father saw his car pull into the driveway and quietly locked the front door. I stood in the living room, my heart pounding. As he walked up the steps, he looked terrible. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, and he looked like he'd lost 10 pounds. He knocked softly on the door. My dad stood beside me, a silent, unmovable mountain. You're not welcome here, Lamar, he said. his voice low and steady through the closed door. Please. Lamar's voice was broken. Pathetic. Please. I just need to talk to her. Just for 5 minutes. Danny. Please, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. I stepped forward. My own voice clear and strong. There's nothing to talk about. Lamar. You need to leave. I love you, he cried. His voice cracking with a sob. I love you, and Leo. Don't do this to us. Don't throw everything away. For a fleeting second, the ghost of the man I had loved stood on my parents' porch, and a pang of grief shot through me. But it was just that a ghost. The living man had killed that love with his own words. You already threw it all away, I said, my voice gentle but final. My forgiveness for you doesn't mean a second chance for our relationship. It means a new beginning for me. Without you in it. Please go. We heard him stand there for a long time, just breathing. Then, the sound of his shuffling footsteps as he walked away. I watched through the window as he got back into his car and drove off, and I didn't feel triumph. I just felt a profound, quiet relief. The final battle was over, and I had survived. The following week, I met with the lawyer I had contacted. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who listened to my story with a grimly satisfied expression. I played her the recording. I showed her the Facebook post. I signed the documents she put in front of me. My signature firm and steady. It was done. The legal machinery was in motion to formally dissolve the life I had once cherished. That afternoon, I called Sarah. It's official, I said, a strange lightness in my voice. Papers are filed. How are you feeling? She asked, her voice full of genuine concern. Empty, I admitted, but clean, like a room that's finally been cleared of all the clutter. I paused, then added, thank you, Sarah, for everything. I couldn't have done it without you. He got what he deserved, she said simply. You know, it's strange. The weekends are so quiet here now. No more loud music from your yard. No more drunken shouting from his friends. She was silent for a beat. We miss you and Leo. But it's peaceful. Peaceful. That was the word. A few months later, that peace began to feel like my new normal. I got a transfer to a clinic near my parents' house. With my half of the savings and a little help from them, I was able to get a small, 2-bedroom apartment for me and Leo. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall, was chosen by me. There were no ghosts here. One sunny afternoon, I took Leo to a park near our new place. He ran shrieking with delight toward the sandbox, his bright red bucket swinging in his hand. I sat down on a nearby bench, watching him. I was wearing a simple yellow sundress I'd bought on clearance. It wasn't a wedding dress, but it made me feel beautiful. I felt the warmth of the sun on my skin and watched my son, my incredible et résilient son, scooping sand with a look of intense concentration on his little face. I thought about Lamar. Not with anger or with sadness anymore, but with a kind of distant pity. He had been so afraid of a trap, so terrified of losing his freedom, that he had built his own cage of deceit and cowardice. He had been the one who was truly trapped all along. A genuine smile spread across my face, unforced and real. I had thought that walking away from my wedding, from the father of my child, would be the great tragedy of my life. But it wasn't. It was my liberation. I had stood up, not just for myself, but for my son. And I had chosen respect over a hollow promise. I had found my strength not in saying I do, but in having the courage to say I'm done. I took a deep, clean breath of the fresh, sweet air, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely and utterly free.